short term, I am bullish, right? And again, at least, especially when we talk about Bitcoin, the stock market's a little bit different. But if we just focus on Bitcoin here, you got to look at this breakout we've had recently, right? So you had this downsloping trend line here. And look at how we got above it. And then the momentum is starting to come into crypto here, or specifically Bitcoin, but it's bleeding over into almost all the cryptocurrencies. So that's exciting because it gives us a short-term up move. I think that ultimately we may head up to at least 18,400. And then the big test will kind of be right here and this secondary downsloping trend line. But I think the bottom line is that in the bigger scheme of things, I'm still on the bearish side, meaning that I don't think that the market has bottomed yet. But again, bear market rallies are awesome for making money in. You just have to be able to see the breakouts occur. So again, I would say short-term bullish, mid-term still bearish. And obviously my long-term view on Bitcoin is unbelievably bullish, as I think it will emerge as the digital gold. Right now, the level to beat is really this high here. And the reason is because this was the high before the recent drop there. And so that's going to be resistance. And then if you extend this trend line back, we can also see that this low, and this low. So it doesn't mean we can't break through it, but as a technician, that would be the first level that the market is going to get tested at, in my opinion, on the upside. So if it gets through there, then we start to have some interesting conversations about, can it go to as high as 21,300, which would then be the FTX high, right? And that would be amazing in terms of the market, because remember the debacle that was FTX and that continues to be FTX, that caused a 25% dip in Bitcoin. If we could somehow get through that, then my midterm bearish analysis might actually change, because we've now taken out a significant pivot point in the charts based off that FTX high. Where I am right now. And interestingly enough, so the reasons why Bitcoin has fallen over the last year have been partially the fact that it was a bubble. So you had a lot of deleveraging going on. Then we've had Terra Luna, we've had Celsius, Voyager, FTX. So it's been a lot of personal issues with cryptocurrency. I think the next leg down is going to be more of a run to safety, where you're going to see the stock market actually start to really crater in the second, third, fourth quarters of 2023, when we get into a recession and the Fed doesn't come running to bail us out. And when you start to see the NASDAQ and the S&P dropping huge amounts, where we find ourselves down another 25, 30% on those indices, I do think that just naturally it's going to take money away from crypto in the near term. And I think so it's going to get away from these bad eggs in crypto. Eventually they're going to get flushed out. I think probably FTX was the worst of it, hopefully, but it's then the next phase, which is just investors getting very, very scared about where the overall economy is going and so forth. As of now, the jobs numbers have still held up. So I think the Fed has indicated they're going to probably hike by 25 basis points in their next meeting. I think as soon as you see the jobs numbers start to roll over, that's where they take a pause. And again, if you look at the economic data, we've seen almost all the economic data weaken except for jobs. And so I think if you get the jobs numbers to weaken, then the Fed has no reason not to stop hiking. But the key is going to be this, is that I think the market, and you could see this from looking at the 10-year yield, which is essentially interest rates, is that we've seen interest rates starting to come down already, which tells you that the Fed may eventually have to cut rates. But I don't think that they're going to cut rates in 2023. My guess is it'll be 2024 before they actually start cutting rates. Absolutely. And we've seen an awesome move on Ethereum, right? So let's take a quick look at that chart and see what it has to show us. So look at this great move. And one of the cool things to look at on Ethereum here is that technically Ethereum broke out before Bitcoin. And it's actually rallied up significantly more percentage-wise than Bitcoin. And I want to show you this. So if you look here, your first trading day above this downsloping trend line, which is identical essentially to the Bitcoin one, was on December 24th. If we flip back to Bitcoin here, look at how the first candle we closed above wasn't until January 4th. So it was basically 10 trading days later. And then we've seen this. But again, the point being is that Ethereum actually appears to be leading Bitcoin in this latest move. And again, what we can see here is that we're actually coming into resistance around $1,350, which is this pivot high. And this is going to be a big test for Ethereum. Can it break through that level? Now, if it does break through that level, we have a couple other points to look at. I would take this pivot high to this level right here. That's going to be kind of just above it as well. And then again, if we get through that, then we might actually be able to go to this 1685 level. But there's a lot of resistance right in this vicinity on Ethereum coming up. And again, big test for the crypto markets. Can they push through these levels? And if we go to XRP, honestly, I'm not thrilled with the performance here, right? If you look at almost any other cryptocurrency, I mean, look at Polkadot. Let's bring up Polkadot here. Look at this incline on Polkadot, right? I mean, beautiful rally there. If we look at Solana, same thing. I mean, unbelievably beautiful move to the upside here from the lows. And then the problem with XRP is that it is holding support, but why hasn't it had a bigger rally here? And again, that's a little bit concerning to me when I see something like that. It doesn't mean it can't play catch up, but generally you'd have to ask yourself again, what am I missing? Why aren't big money? Why isn't big money or even retail money flooding in here and pushing this up with the rest of cryptocurrencies? So I'd be a little careful right here in the next couple of weeks on Ripple, just until we see a little bit more information on what's going on here. So stock-wise, it's a little trickier, but let me show you guys the one that I'm keeping an eye on. In fact, I do own a little bit of this. It's natural gas. So natural gas has been absolutely demolished, right? We've seen this big dip here just since basically mid-December. We've seen a drop of, honestly, it's about 50% in natural gas, 50% drop in natural gas. But look at where we currently are on the chart. This long-term pivot from October 28th of 2020, and then these lows right here. So for me, this is where I start to nibble. It's not where I go all in. I don't usually do that on any one entry, but this is where I start to nibble for a technical retrace bounce. It'd be interesting to see if we do get that. So that's one of them that I like. And then, a couple of the other ones, let me just see. I still like it. So it's hard to be long a lot of technology stocks right now, like Apple and so forth, because we've had such big bounces coming in here. And I think Apple actually probably goes up about here and then has another big dump. But for me, it's kind of playing like, there's trades like, for instance, CGC, which is a marijuana stock. And it's kind of saying, okay, we have this longer term trend line here, and there's a little bullish consolidation going on here. And the question is, at what point does the federal government finally kind of give way and legalize recreational marijuana on a federal basis, or even medicinal, right? So I think that's something I'm looking at, some of these beaten down plays that haven't had big bounces here, where there could be a news story that is the catalyst. Aside from that, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm doing a fair amount of shorting. I'm starting to look for more and more shorts for the next leg down on the S&P 500. Yeah. So, and to be honest, I think, like you said, you'll get big bounces because that's what happens in bear markets. So as a trader, that's fantastic for us. But like, if I show my S&P 500 chart, I mean, this is about as bearish as you can get. You have this downsloping trend line right here that price has not been able to get through. And then you had this little pivot low right here. We broke it. And then look at this bearish pattern. And then this is resistance. We kind of kissed it yesterday. So for me, this is a pattern where I expect it to break to the downside. And probably within weeks, I think, like maybe within 2 to 4 weeks, we could be retesting the October lows on the S&P at around 3,500. So I think, again, part of that is going to be inflation. Yes, it's going to come down. Like we have the CPI data on Thursday. I think it's going to come down, but you're not going to see it come down enough before we enter a recession. And as soon as we enter a recession and inflation is still elevated, let's say even 3 or 4%, the Fed is in handcuffs. They can't do anything at that point, because if they do stimulate, then inflation goes from 4% to 15%. Right. And so this is going to be a really big conundrum for the U.S. stock market in general. And I think you got to look at other markets. Like, I mean, I was a big fan of China a few months ago. It's obviously had a huge rally, so I wouldn't be a buyer up here. But on pullbacks, I think that's a good one. And like the EWZ, which is the Brazil market, I mean, this thing is starting to rip up. You can see the last few days, it's had a nice move. But look at the bigger picture on this. I mean, the bigger picture, this was your 2008 high, and it's trading all the way down here, never even come close to that level. My expectation is in 2023, we're going to break out above this downsloping trend line and start to really have a big move on the EWZ, which again is the Brazilian stock market. So it's kind of cool. I mean, there's definitely some interesting things going on here. Let me just show that screen again. I want to show you guys. This is the Brazilian stock market chart. Right here. And so you can see this was your 2008 high, and look at this consolidation down here. So To me, this is a scenario where there's more opportunity outside the US for going long stocks than there is inside of the US. And part of that is the fact that there's been so much money flow into the US since COVID that at some point when we do get in a recession and the Fed doesn't rescue us, that money is going to look to go outside the US. It's going to leave the US.